And now,
ladies and gentlemen,
please fasten your seatbelts.
Welcome to PreneurCast.
You know, business cards are being swapped, beers being drunk.
Can I say a nasty word? Can I say procrastination?
With Pete Williams and Don Gosher.
How well did that go down?
We can talk about that entire thing in a very another rant and soapbox episode if we want to.
Visit us online at PreneurMarketing.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of PreneurCast with me, Dom Goucher, and him, Pete Williams.
Morning, afternoon, evening, everybody. Hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are.
Indeed. It's morning for me. I've just got back from my morning swim.
Fantastic. Well, I went for my afternoon run, so it's a perfect balance.
I almost feel like I can join in this conversation now because I do go for a swim in the morning.
I know. It's impressive. You're active.
Yeah.
It's freaking me out.
I've seen daylight. It's amazing. Cool, folks. This week's is a conversation. Just to give you an idea what we're going to be doing this week, is an inspirational conversation with Pete and a chap called Richie Norton, who's the author of a book called The Power of Starting Something Stupid. And I was looking forward to this conversation. It's a fantastic book. And before we get into that, Pete, you've been busy while I've been recovering from my digital publishing extravaganza. You've been busy in the background this week, haven't you?
Yeah, well, me not so much, but the team. People who do play along at home probably may have noticed by now that we've had a soft launch of a brand new website, or at least skin and design of PreneurMarketing.com. The blog that's sort of the focus point for a lot of stuff we do has had a refresh and a revamp to be a lot more content focused, a bit more Web 4.0 or whatever version we're up to now of the internet. It seems to keep changing. So that's been really cool. So it's a much more engaging site, much more content rich, a lot more places where people can actually leave comments and converse with us on the site, and got some really cool tools and downloads and stuff coming too. So it's been a couple of weeks in the works, which is very exciting to announce. And what this also means is we're kind of retiring PreneurMedia.tv, which has obviously been the home of PreneurCast. We're not retiring the podcast, don't worry about that, just retiring the website it used to live at. So we're actually kind of making it easier for everybody and having just PreneurMarketing.com be that central place for everything involved around the Preneur community. So if you like to read the transcripts and download the PDF version, or leave comments about a particular show, or got questions to ask, or check out the show notes and the links and all that sort of stuff, PreneurMarketing.com is the place to go right now. We've redirected all the old PreneurMedia.tv links and pages through to the new posts on Preneur Marketing. So all the old episodes are still available on PreneurMarketing.com as we speak. So you can go back and listen to all of those shows and download them and all that goodness, which is super exciting. So PreneurMarketing.com, check it out and leave a comment and let us know your thoughts on the new appearance.
Absolutely. It's a consolidation of all the different things that we're working on to move this over to PreneurMarketing.com. And it's a bit of a big move. We had all these separate pieces and we put them all back together. So it is a work in progress. We really would appreciate your feedback on this. Pete's had his team working round the clock to get this going. So I think it's a great new look, as you say, content oriented. And very, very stylish, sir. Very stylish. And what you may or may not have noticed, I mean, hopefully listening to this episode, you might have picked up already on this change. As Pete said, if you're following along, you'll have seen the website. But it's kind of across the board rebrand. So one of the other things we've done is the podcast itself, just to take you down a little bit to the detail. The intros and outros have changed. Did you even notice? And the logo's changed. Did you even notice that?
Yep.
Just keep you on your toes, folks. Just if you're paying attention.
We
but the big news
did that for a couple of reasons, just to sort of, I guess, educate people as well around. One of the other reasons we did the logo change is that iTunes had changed their requirements or specifications around podcast logos. They now need 1400 by 1400 size graphics, which is absolutely huge. But that's so they can obviously use that in other forms of marketing to promote their most popular shows. And we've had a couple of emails from iTunes saying, come on guys, get your stuff together and give us a new higher quality version of your logo. And unfortunately, the old photo we used was too small. It wouldn't go to 1400 by 1400. So we kind of were forced to do that by iTunes, saying we want to help promote your show to more listeners and feature you more readily. And we needed to do this new icon change for that. So that was kind of an exciting thing too, again. So thank you for everyone who leaves comments on iTunes and obviously downloads through iTunes, because obviously that's showing a lot of weight behind our show that iTunes wants to support. So thank you, current listeners, to help us get new listeners.
Indeed. So that's the big news, I guess. Folks, do go have a look around PreneurMarketing.com and give us your feedback on that, as always. But for podcast listeners, the big news is that PreneurMedia.tv is no more. All those links now point to somewhere on PreneurMarketing.com, and going forward, that's where all the show notes, the downloads, and all the commenting and stuff can be found. So with that said, Pete, let's get into your conversation with Richie about his book, The Power of Starting Something Stupid.
Sounds great. And for those of you who didn't hear the end of last week's episode, you might want to get a box of tissues for the first 5 or 6 minutes of this conversation. Richie, thank you so much for your time, buddy. Really do appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my honor. Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Awesome, man. Well, the book's been fantastic. I know when I was first sent a review copy, which was a few months ago now, and took a while to get our schedules together, but it's well worth it. That I think it was like very rarely does the first chapter of a book really move me as much as yours did, and I'd love to get your words on the introduction to the book and how you set the frame, because it's a very powerful story and something very raw that you actually gave away in that. So I really appreciate it as a reader, and would love to sort of, I guess, start this conversation off with you sharing that story, because I think it was so important.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I've been working on this book for about 6 years, and during that time, a lot of things happened, and that's kind of where the first chapter starts. Is some of these crazy things that happened in my life. My brother-in-law, he was living on and off with us in Hawaii, and it was the craziest thing. One day, out of nowhere, he just didn't wake up. He was only 21 years old, and he was, my wife's best friend, her only sibling. He had just, become like my son. We had one boy at the time, and two at the time that he passed away, I think. And he just loved them, snuggled them, and he was just everything. And so when he passed away, it just shook us to the core. And, you think that all this time to do what you want to do. You think you're going to be able to grow and live and be, go into retirement and kind of fulfill all your dreams. But when someone passes away at 21, you realize that life is a lot shorter, or it can be, than you expect. And that was just a huge realization for us. A couple of years later, we had, actually, it was by now our fourth son. So we had 3 boys when Natalie's brother Gavin, my wife Natalie, her brother Gavin passed away, and we had our 4th son, and we named him Gavin after my wife's brother Gavin. And he brought so much joy into our lives, and almost kind of filled that hole that was there as much as he could in his own little way, that his uncle Gavin had left. Unfortunately, after a few weeks into his short life, he caught something called pertussis, which is also known as whooping cough. And it was the craziest thing. We went to the hospital thinking that everything would be fine, and we'd been in the hospital before saying he was having trouble breathing, and they said he was going to be fine. But one night it just got really bad, and they ended up admitting us to the hospital, and we thought we were going to be in and out of there, but we ended up staying there for quite a while. And it came to the point about a week into it at the hospital that the doctors let us know that he wasn't And you know, he had all these wires in him, and it was just so hard to even see what our son was going through. And they let us know that, you know, when to it, they could try to resuscitate him, you know, but it would be violent, and he would ultimately pass away anyways, because it was just too much on his fragile little body. And so we decided that in his last moments of his life that we would just hold him. My wife would hold him. We'd sing him a lullaby, and I had my hand on his heart and just feeling for those last beats until he slipped away. And gosh, the world just sort of felt heavier, you know, than leaving that hospital empty-handed. And again, I just realized life is so short, and it's too short not to act on, you know, those ideas that press on our minds, and to live a life in a way that we don't have regret, and to live for those that didn't have the chance, you know, to live a full life. So that's kind of where the book starts, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember reading that, and I've had my first son, and I think he was about 10 weeks old when I was reading started reading your book, and it really shook me, which was amazing. And the rest of the book, you know, goes on to tell some amazing stories. And let's move on to the happier times. You refer to this whole principle that I guess is the foundation of the book as Gavin's Law.
Yeah, so I say Gavin's Law, which is live to start to live. Because when you live to start those, what I call stupid ideas, you really do start living. Things start happening, and one thing leads to another. And there's so many people that are just kind of like the living dead. They just don't do their life, and they're just moping around. But when you embrace those ideas and you live to start them, you really do start living. So that's Gavin's Law.
And so you take that principle of stories throughout the whole book, don't you, and sort of share a whole bunch of stories of people who have started something stupid and then obviously taken the big lesson out of that. What's your favourite story out of all the research you did and the ones you share in the book? Was there a favourite story?
Well, honestly, they're all my favorites because they're all so funny. You know what I mean? There's so many like crazy things. I mean, from like the guy that had the idea to sell. This is, you know, back in the late 70s, early 80s, the guy that had the idea to sell used Levi's that he was buying for pennies in the United States and was shipping them over to Europe and Asia and selling them for hundreds of dollars. You know what I mean? I mean, it was a crazy, stupid idea, but it worked, and they made tons of money doing it. And then there's just stories of, you know, the average person that either, you know, changed their major to do something that, you know, not everyone thought they should do, but it turned out to be something great. But then there's all these famous people. Everybody from things like let's see, the telephone, things like Twitter, for example, the car, the Model T. All these things were stupid ideas that turned out to be smart ideas. One of my favorite stories is the story of Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon.
Yep.
You know, he was working on Wall Street, and he had this idea to sell books online. And he told his boss about this idea, and his boss said, "Let's go for a walk in the park." And he took him on a 2-hour walk in Central Park and basically tried to talk him out of doing this idea. You know, he said, in essence, you know, it's but for someone who doesn't already have a good job, you know? And so it became this crazy, stupid idea for Jeff Bezos to, you know, what was he going to do? Was he going to keep his job, or was he going to start this thing, or what was he going to do? He ended up asking himself this one question. He asked himself, will I regret it when I'm 80?
Yeah.
And he decided, because he would regret not starting this idea of his when he's 80, that he would quit his job in the middle of the year, which is another insane time to quit because you don't get your annual bonus, you know, in the financial industry like that. And he ended up packing up his bags And driving from, he quit his job and drove from New York to Washington and started Amazon. And the rest is history. He changed the world. So, stupid, it's not that it's inherently stupid, but sometimes it's the circumstances, it's our belief system, it's what other people think, it's unconventional, it's creative. But in reality, stupid is the new smart.
Absolutely. I think that the Bezos test that you refer to it as, I think it's brilliant. And this is something that I don't know where I heard it before, but I've heard that before and use it and in my own life, but also to people I talk about, is that when you're 80, will you regret it? And, this is a whole range of things, whether it's starting a business or learning a skill or because most people, I think, when you talk to people who are 80 and say, what do you regret? They don't regret what they've done. They regret what they didn't do. And I think that's a statement probably people have heard before, but probably don't act on as much as they should.
No, it's totally true. I was doing some retirement consulting for a number of years. I was president of a financial services company, and I would interview people that were approaching retirement. And I asked them, about their life and what was good and what was bad. And what was interesting is a lot of them told me they waited their whole lives until they thought they'd have, a time when they'd have more education or more money or more spare time on their hands. And they waited until retirement to do these ideas they wanted to do, only to find that they still needed more time, more education, or more money, or something. The circumstances had changed. Spouse had passed away, or they were unhealthy. They didn't have the resources they thought they'd have, and so it's so important that when we have these so-called stupid ideas, that we just don't wait. A lot of times we put it off. I'll do it later. I'll do it later. I'll do it later. But later is sometimes too late. Like going back to Gavin's law, we might not live that long, or if we do, the circumstances in our life are going to change. So the only time that we are guaranteed is right now. So if there's an idea that's pressing on your mind, even if it seems to be quote unquote stupid, now's the time to act on it. And it can change your life and change the lives of people everywhere, so.
Well, let me ask you this question, because this is probably something I'm assuming you've been asked before. You touched on it in the book, is how do you differentiate a stupid idea in this context of Gavin's law compared to just being foolish? Right. So that's a really good question. And in the book, I talk about the difference between, I call it healthy stupid and unhealthy stupid, and obviously there's certain things that are they're obviously stupid, things that would hurt yourself or hurt other people. But then it starts to get gray where you're like, yeah, but I might lose money, this is risky, or I might lose face. I might be shamed in some way. And that's where it gets risky. So the honest answer is nobody knows. You don't know if it's going to be successful or not, right? Because a lot of times people say that it was stupid because it wasn't successful. But how many successes came out of other unsuccessful pursuits? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We learn from these failures, we build on top of them and move forward. And so then I go back to that. Will I regret it when I'm 80? If you're going to regret something, you would rather live and doing it and fail at it than you would live and thinking back your whole life. I wish I would have done that one thing. You know what I mean? And I think the difference for me, and I love your opinion and experience on this point, is that it's the topic. The title of the book is it's about starting something stupid, and I think the biggest thing is starting. And I want to talk to you about starting in a moment. So something you wrote about, which I love, but it's about starting something stupid, not executing the idea stupidly. And this is it's a slight differentiation, but I think a lot of people, when they think start something stupid, just means I'm just going to go and throw paint at a wall and see what sticks. It's about getting the guts to actually take that first step, and then once you have the motion, be intelligent and execute that in a smart way, not in a stupid way.
Exactly. I mean, and people like to say that entrepreneurs are risk takers, and while that has merit, entrepreneurs are actually risk mitigators. You know what I mean? They're looking for ways to reduce that risk in every step of the way. They're just brave enough to move forward, and have the courage, even though it might not work out.
Yeah.
So you have to do that when you're starting this stupid idea, for sure. I totally agree.
So when it comes to starting, I'd love to sort of break down your, I guess, definition or term or principle around starting.
Yeah. So I researched how people, I learned that through my research, successful people start things, and that was obvious. And what was interesting was that successful people didn't just start anything. A lot of times it was that they started something they thought maybe was stupid or crazy. And I also realized that they all had these certain characteristics of a way that they would kind of build a network and create connections and start to work towards making their project happen. And what I call it is actually START. So the acronym for START is serve, thank, ask, receive, and trust. START, serve, thank, ask, receive, and trust. When you start, people ask me all the time, so where do I start? And a lot of times I'll say, start with service. When you start serving other people, not only will you make connections with them, but you'll start to kind of learn the ropes. And when you thank people, even for the opportunity to serve them, you start to solidify those relationships, and you start to create this virtuous upward cycle of serving and thanking, and people start serving and thanking you in return. And then you get to a point where you can actually ask. You can actually ask people for help, whether that be something financial or a mentorship or a connection. But when you ask, you want it to be a genuine ask, what I call mission matching, where when you ask for help, you're actually asking something that is in line with something that they already want to do. So you're matching your mission with their mission, and it becomes this, everybody is winning at the same time. And the next one is receive, and you want to be open to receiving that help. Sometimes people will say, hey, I need some help, but when the help comes, they're like, no, it's okay. I don't need your help. But it's kind of like in American football, when a quarterback throws the ball to the receiver, the objective is that he catches it and runs with it, and scores. And there's a difference between, imagine if that receiver just dropped the ball on purpose. It kind of defeats the whole game. Life is in some ways a game. When people are offering you something, you can receive it, meaning you actually take it and you do something worthwhile, score with it, so to speak. Everybody again wins. There's a difference between accepting, which is just like, oh, thank you for that gift, and receiving, which is taking that gift and doing something more with it, right? So serve, thank, ask, receive, and the last is trust. When you go through this process, you want to trust the process. And too many people are afraid, I can't share my idea because somebody's going to steal it. I can't trust that person because, somehow they're going to stab me in the back. But the secret to trusting is you have to trust first. If you don't trust others, other people won't trust you. And trust is the glue that puts this whole process together and being able to start your stupid idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what it's all about. It's actually just getting that action and that momentum building up. Some of the stuff you do talk about further in the book, which I want to talk about, is this momentum building scenario, or at least getting that ball rolling. Because one of the things you talk about is destroying the waiting place as a thing you need to do to get that momentum started. I'd love you to sort of delve deep a little bit of that for our listeners, if you can.
Yeah. So, destroying the waiting place. I had a meeting with this investment banker, and I was trying to raise money for a venture, and I was really young, and I was living in Hawaii. I didn't have any money or anything, but I had a nice lifestyle, and here I am talking to this filthy rich investment banker asking for money, and he kind of looks at me and says, I've been working my whole life to be able to get back to almost like back to where my college days were, where I didn't have all this responsibility, get back to a place like Hawaii where you're at right now. And I realized, oh my gosh, he's been waiting and working his Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
We got some weird thing, some buzz going on.
Strange.
All right. That's okay.
Right. The guy's going to edit that in post.
No worries. But he'd been waiting his whole life to be able to be doing what I was doing at, a really young age. And I wasn't doing anything special, but his dreams, his life had been put on hold. He essentially pushed, pause on life. And so it's essential that we, again, destroy this waiting place, so to speak. As I mentioned, right now, this time is the only time that we're really guaranteed. I mean, try to do something in the future. Right now, try to do something in the future. You can't. The future is always 1 second, 1 minute, 1 year ahead of us. And so we have to act in the present. But we trick ourselves and say we can do that thing in the future, and then we never end up doing it, and then we end up regretting not doing it, right? So the idea is, if you have this big picture dream, can you break it down into small, manageable parts? And if you can break it down into little pieces, which piece can you start with first? And it might be as small as making a phone call or sending an email. But doing that one thing then creates this, what's called a processional effect, where one thing leads to another, right? The email, you send an email comes back. Oh, wow. Now we can learn something. Maybe we can create a project. See, projects, I really believe in them as a way to get your stupid idea going, because they have a beginning and an end. And so you can test out your idea, see if it's going to work or not. Is it a stupid idea or is it a stupid smart idea, right? And you can then experiment with it, and if it works, move forward. If it doesn't, move on, and build upon those things. So is that sort of the form of leaning into stupid that you talk about? Exactly. That's leaning into stupid. It's both something you do actively by starting small projects, lean into stupid, but also mentally. Because a lot of people, as soon as they feel like, people like to put a label on things. Oh, that's a stupid idea, therefore I won't do it. And a lot of times people will run from stupid because they're afraid of being shamed, and they end up missing out on huge opportunities. Whereas other people who have been largely successful leaned into stupid and unconventional wisdom, and then embraced it by starting these small projects. And one thing led to another, and then they're able to create something huge. Even things like eBay. People said eBay was stupid, and then look where it is now. Absolutely. And this is the thing: is it's not about packing up the house and the kids, leaving the school, and driving across the other side of the country to start your idea. Like that is unhealthy stupid. That's unhealthy stupid. And, I mean, a lot of people think, I tell some of these stories of what people have done, like Jeff Bezos and whatnot. But that doesn't mean you have to quit your job and travel across the country or the world to go do something. That was him. You can start something on the side. Start small. Start with one. It's out. And to be honest, Jeff Bezos didn't just jump ship. He had done tons of research before he made that decision. You know what I mean? Yeah. So he'd done the research. He'd done the due diligence, and he had some venture behind him and some capital, and was able to sort of roll it out with somewhat mitigated risk. Obviously, over time, Amazon, grew for years, not making any money, but he had that business model in place, and people were willing to back him. At the time, whether there's a lot of people saying it was a silly idea, it wasn't a smart idea, it was a stupid idea, it wasn't going to succeed. But he had enough people believing in him and supporting that idea that obviously Amazon is where it is today. And it's I think pretty much everyone listening to this conversation would have at least bought something off Amazon once in the last 12 months. Which is a phenomenal statistic, where we've got an audience all around the globe. I get deliveries from Amazon almost every week here in Australia, and it's just phenomenal to think of this one ginormous, almost monopoly that's built out of a stupid idea. It's unbelievable. It really is. Yeah. So let me ask you this, Rich. This is a question that we ask everyone who comes on the show. Is what's the one question I haven't asked you yet that I should be asking you? That's a good question. Well, I guess you could ask, how do you overcome the fear? How do you overcome the fear of starting a stupid idea?
I think for a lot of people that it is a huge fear, particularly because they do probably see it's a big task to take on, or what if it fails? How am I going to look in front of my family and my wife and my friends? So from your perspective, your experience, the research you've done, how do you overcome that?
So kind of the model I kind of built out in the book is that in order to start your stupid idea, you have to work first on the psychology part of it, which is overcoming fear, pride, negative pride, and procrastination. And when you do that, you can step into being authentic. It's like breaking out of a shell and being yourself. Imagine if you're always scared and too proud to start something new and different, and you're always procrastinating it. Can you really be yourself? But imagine if you had no fear and no pride, no procrastination, who would you be? And you would be you. You'd be the real you. You'd be authentic, And so I like to talk about overcoming fear with this example of a surfer. I'm a surfer, love surfing, and I have a friend.
You're a Hawaiian boy. You have to.
Is right. Exactly. And I have this friend, he rides, the waves, the 20-foot plus waves. And one time he was out at Sunset Beach in Hawaii on Oahu, and he, caught this massive 20-foot plus wave and ended up actually throwing him over the falls of the wave. And he kind of flew from the top to the bottom, and the board swung up, and it kind of came down like an axe and chopped him right in the leg and broke his femur. And he ended up getting kind of just pummeled over and over and over by the waves that kept coming, and he thought he was going to die. Fortunately, somebody came, helped him, get out of that impact zone and onto the shore, and he was okay. Now, that's a scary story, but what's interesting is he got back in the water just a few weeks later with a new, shiny metal pole in his leg. And so I asked him, I said, do you have a death wish? How are you not scared? Do you have no fear? And what he said was really interesting. He said, actually, I am scared. Everyone out there is scared. But he just loves surfing. And his purpose, his why, was bigger, so to speak, than the fear. And so first part of overcoming fear, your why for what you're doing needs to be larger than your fear. You need to be more scared of not doing it than you are of doing it. And the second thing is, he didn't just get out there and start surfing 20-foot waves. I mean, if he didn't know how to swim, if you didn't know how to swim, could you even go out there in the first place? Yeah. No. He started out, obviously learning how to swim, learning how to ride 1-2-foot waves, 5-foot waves, and then building up to 10, 15-foot, 20-foot, size waves. And along that curve of learning how to ride these smaller waves, he would fail. He would fall down over and over and over, and he built up a tolerance for failure, which helped him overcome the fear. So when he was falling on 1-foot, 2-foot, 5-foot, 10-foot waves, he was able to then be strong enough, so to speak, to fall off a 20-foot wave and mentally say, oh, I can get back out there. I know what I did wrong. I can do it right this time. So bringing that back to practical matters for us, when we have a task, if we can take that big, again, I'll say that big picture dream and break it down into small manageable parts. Take that big fear, break it down into small parts, and do the first part that you can overcome. And then when you can move from that part that you can overcome to the next part, and you build incrementally, these successes and failures to overcome that fear. So you just got to start small. Start with the one. Start with that one thing that's right in front of you.
I love it, Richie. Well, mate, that's been a fantastic glimpse into Gavin's law and obviously the book. So really do appreciate your time, mate, and thank you so much. The book is The Power of Starting Something Stupid by Richie Norton. And again, Richie, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, it's my honor. Thank you so much. It was wonderful talking to you.
Pete. That was a great conversation. Lots of great examples and little stories. I almost felt an affinity with Richie and his story about living in Hawaii and being a surfer and whatever. With me living by the coast as I do, I almost felt I could join in.
Love it. No, he's a remarkable guy, and it's a remarkable book. And obviously, he's gone through a lot. And with Eli being 7 months old now, and a little bit younger when we actually recorded that conversation, because it was recorded a few weeks back, it was hitting very hard home to me at the time. So it takes a lot of courage, obviously, to share stories like that, and obviously take it through to a book that's fantastic, and just loving to help Richie share the message and things like that. So really encourage people to go and check out Richie's book and ideally listen to The Power of Starting Something Stupid through our sponsor Audible. And obviously those who haven't taken action yet, shame on you. audibletrial.com/PreneurCast is there ready and waiting for you guys to go and download a free audio book from Audible. They have an offer there for our PreneurCast community. You can go to audibletrial.com/PreneurCast, sign up and trial their service and get a free audio book. And obviously, Richie's book is available on Audible and is a great place to start.
Indeed. And I couldn't help myself when I was reading that and listening to the conversation, especially when I was listening to the conversation between you and Richie. But I couldn't help thinking that this is a guy that agrees with us about our JFDI methodology.
Yes, absolutely. Just effing do it.
Yep. Okay, folks. Little bit of a side note about the move, the consolidation to everything to PreneurMarketing.com. We would normally remind you at the end of the show that we run competitions over at PreneurMarketing.com/win, and we regularly change the competition depending on what we've got to give away. It's usually a book or a number of books from the authors that we have the conversations with. When they come on the show, we ask them to give us something to give to you, the listeners, to say thank you. And the last competition we were running was Joanna Wiebe and Copy Hackers. And we've had a bit of feedback about that competition. Fabulous. Thank you, everybody. Great, great show, and all that stuff. But with the move to PreneurMarketing.com, there were some technical issues, and the competition system went a bit haywire. So for those of you who are really keen on entering that competition, it's still live, and we're going to leave it live a little bit longer to give everybody a chance to enter the competition to win a copy of the Copy Hackers Differentiation book, the Startup Guide to Differentiation. So that's over at PreneurMarketing.com/win. When we end that competition, we'll start another one. So if you're listening to this down the line, you're coming back to this later on and you hear it, that competition page will always be there over at PreneurMarketing.com/win. It'll just change what it is that you can win. So go and check it out.
Absolutely.
Yep. And just with that, a reminder that we're consolidating all of PreneurCast shows on PreneurMarketing.com. PreneurMedia.tv is being shut down. We're redirecting everything to PreneurMarketing.com. So that's where you will find downloads, show notes, links, all the things we talk about in the show, the transcripts, and it's where you can leave us a comment either below the post or hopefully, when the text settles itself down with the little SpeakPipe audio track that you can leave. And as always, you can leave us a review or a comment and feedback on iTunes, which we do appreciate. So, folks, hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as we did, and thanks for joining us.
See you next week.
You've been enjoying another fine episode of PreneurCast with Pete Williams and Dom Gaucher. Make sure to hang out with the boys online at www.PreneurMarketing.com or drop them a line via PreneurCast@PreneurGroup.com.